Welcome back to Coloring Through the Bible. My name is Keegan Harkins, and today we're going to be talking about resisting the beautiful temptations that life uses to entice us away from living faithfully. We're talking about Exodus chapter 34. And in this chapter, God commands the Israelites not to make covenants with the people of the land that they're about to move into. God's reasoning? Well, those who don't follow God lead away from him. See, the sights and sounds of this world, they clamor for our attention. Rarely does a day go by that we're not bombarded by ads beckoning us away from God's commandments. It's become unpopular, at the very least, to stay true and faithful to God's word. It seems like more and more the Christian lifestyle fits into society less and less. God's laws are not only unpopular, some of them have really been under attack in the last few years by society, to the point where we aren't merely ridiculed for not participating in society's popular sins, but a lot of times we're even labeled to be heretics or propagators of hate simply because we choose to follow God's laws, even when man's law says we don't have to. I'm not saying that we should all go out and break the law. That goes completely against God's word. We're commanded to honor our rulers, and we're commanded to pray for the people who rule over us. I am talking about those situations where God's mandate for our lives opposes popular practices. So some pretty obvious examples would be premarital sex, divorce, abortion, things like that. We're not breaking the law by not participating in them, but we are going against the normal way that life goes when we say, hey, I choose not to do the things that the world says are okay. So if we allow ourselves to be enticed by the beautiful sins, I call them the beautiful sins because they're the things that society says are good. They're fine. They're totally great and everybody should participate in them. But if God's word says that's not true, it's a sin. The world may say it's beautiful. They may encourage it. But when God says that that's something you shouldn't do, it doesn't matter how beautiful it looks. It doesn't matter how many people agree with it. It's still a sin. And if we allow ourselves to give in to those things that the world says are just fine, these things that surround us and are presented as good and even healthy, we find ourselves being pulled away from God. Now, King Solomon is a perfect example of this. He is known for being a wise ruler. He's the one who built the temple. But now, in his younger days, he is described in 1 Kings 3:3. Solomon showed his love for the Lord by walking according to the statutes of his father David. He walked the right way. He did the right things in his younger years. He had a close relationship with God, and God blessed him. God honored him. He became, one of the most famous rulers of Israel. In fact, he was famous throughout the entire world for his wisdom, and he had a huge fortune. He was just completely blessed because he walked the way that God wanted him to walk. But unfortunately, at some point, Solomon stopped following God, and he began to follow the beautiful temptations that were offered to him. 1 Kings 11:4 tells us, as Solomon grew old, his wives turned his heart after other gods, and his heart was not fully devoted to the Lord his God. See, the world is full of beautiful and fun temptations that pull us away from God. They offer the allure of success. But what the world offers won't stand the test of time. It's like cheap jewelry. The sparkle fades. That glittering gold turns your fingers green. And if we're to survive this world, we need to surround ourselves with the encouragement of godly friends. When we hold each other up, we're less likely to fall. It's hard, it's not impossible, But it's hard to stand alone when everybody's going the other way. But if we surround ourselves with people who are following God, it makes it easier. When everyone else is going one way, if you have someone to stand with you, it makes it easier to stand there and say, I'm not going to get in a fight with you about it. I'm not going to be confrontational, because I don't think that solves anything. I think that divides us. When you come at somebody in a combative mood, it really pushes them off. And then they're never going to go your way. They're never going to see why you're doing what you're doing, because all they hear is judgment and condemnation. And that's not how we should be living our life. But we should resist the temptations. And the best way to do that is to not put ourselves in a situation where it's going to be a temptation, to be able to just walk away. Solomon could have stopped getting more wives. No one needs hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of wives. Can you imagine that? It's just not, I can't even imagine what that would be like. But he picked wives who were not godly. And when we open up our lives and connect with somebody who is leading us in another direction, we're really setting ourselves up for a fall. And just like Solomon, he didn't turn his back completely on the Lord. He didn't fall away completely or stop believing that God was God. But he lost that intimate relationship with the Lord because he was enticed away. And I think that it's a lot easier than we think it is to be enticed when everybody around us says, hey, this is the way we're supposed to be going. So my encouragement to you today is to be mindful of the company that you keep. I know I've said that before, but it's just a really important rule. And it's one that in Exodus, God kind of harps on it quite a bit, because he knew that the Israelites were going to settle in their promised land, and they were going to be tempted, and they were going to walk away and follow the other people that were there and start to mold their lives after their practices and their false gods. And we're no stronger than they were. We're surrounded by things that lead away from God. So we need to be aware of that. And we need to help ourselves resist those temptations by surrounding ourselves with company that leads towards the Lord. Yes, we are surrounded in this world, but we need to have our eyes focused on God. Because when we get our eyes off of God, it's really easy to believe the beautiful temptations. So I hope you've been encouraged today, and I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Have a truly blessed day.